EU opened an antitrust investigation into the App Store last year after Spotify complained of unfair competition and licensing agreements. Developers, remember, are required to pay that 30% commission to Apple on all subscription fees gathered through the App Store in year one. On top of that, Apple also denies them the ability to offer consumers other ways to sign up. Now, Apple has fired back, calling the EU's case, quote, the opposite of fair competition. It claims it actually helped Spotify grow into the largest music subscription service in the world by providing access to its platform and services. Joanna, is this argument going to work?
Well, I think it's the argument we're going to be hearing across all of Apple's regulatory and legal issues. I mean, we're headed into the federal Epic case that's coming up this next week. And I think we're going to hear a lot of the same arguments from Apple, which is, one, we provide this platform and we have allowed these companies to be extremely successful. And two, some of these restrictions have allowed these companies to make even more money than they would have made on our platform. I don't necessarily buy these arguments. I think there is certainly, as you said before, a gatekeeper aspect, and many believe a bully aspect in the sense that they own the store, they set the rules, and they've been pushing their weight around.
Tim, is Apple a stock you'd be a buyer of here?
Look, the only thing I care about with Apple is what they told us yesterday, which is that there's $205 billion in cash on the balance sheet. They've got 660 million paid subs. They've got a billion installed base and a 5G cycle that is a super cycle. So we've heard this before. We've seen this before. Apple is a bully, and they can be a bully as an investor. And again, we talk about this investor versus trader in Apple. Be an investor here. This company is innovating. The services business grew 26%. The dynamic of the services business, including podcasts, including streaming, is growing and becoming more important. So these are not great headlines, and Apple's going to have to figure this out. And there may be other people coming after them. They have been for years. But it's not a reason to sell the stock, and you're buying weakness on Apple the next time you see it.
Yeah, and you'd be selling what Berkshire would happily be buying. And I bet we'll hear some more from them as well on this investment over the weekend. All right, next, if you plan on going into the office, you might need to bring that vaccination card because a new Arizona State University survey shows that more than 60% of U.S. companies plan to require proof of vaccination from employees. This is a bigger number than I would have imagined. The responses came from more than 900 American firms across dozens of sectors. 44% said they'll require all employees to get vaccinated. 31% say they would encourage it, and 14% said they would only require some employees to get the vaccine. Before you decide you won't comply, consider that 42% of companies say they won't allow unvaccinated people back in their buildings, and a third say disciplinary actions are on the table. Robert, what are your thoughts on this?
This is just going to be a tricky issue that just gets trickier. You have that controversy in Florida where the governor has essentially, and now the legislature, is going to prevent companies from preventing non-vaccinated employees from returning to work, and questions about the constitutionality of both the legislation and whether companies can indeed require employees to be vaccinated to come back to work. Most companies, when I did reporting here in New York, are saying we are strongly encouraging employees. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that they can or cannot walk through that door with their employee badge if they have not been vaccinated? And I think beyond the constitutional legal issues, it's going to be a question of what companies, what they really do when the rubber hits the road and their non-vaccinated employees who are at the door want to come back to work. And what do they say? I suspect they will let them in. But I suspect they won't go the legal route. But this is going to be fought out in the courts.
Tim, what would you add?
Well, first of all, if I was allowed back in the office, you wouldn't have that goofy frozen picture of me that you just had before. So, I mean,
is it because you're not getting vaccinated? What's the issue here?
No. Look, I'm vaxxed, and I'm proudly vaxxed. So I think it's a case where it comes down to where employers want to grant flexibility in the future. I think that's the most important dynamic. 2021, I think there's very little employers can do to push on folks. And I don't think most employers will. But I think providing some flexibility in the workplace, especially for those who really can be location independent, is just going to be a perk. It's going to be something the market will decide. Those companies will get the best workers if they can offer that. But I think there's a lot of businesses, frankly, that rely on the interactivity of people being in the same place that want their people back. And I think that's not a bad thing.
Joanne, I wonder, too, I mean, the workforce is one issue, but what if there are events or restaurants or other types of gatherings that are going through the same process of saying either you must be vaccinated to enter or you can't? I mean, it would seem to raise some of the issues Robert was describing.
Yeah, and as both of them were talking, I was really thinking about what's the encouragement that's going to come from these companies. I think that's one of the most interesting things. What can they do to encourage employees without actually saying you must get vaccinated, whether it be time off to get the vaccine, time off in other areas, like you're saying, perks to go to the parties, to go do these sorts of things. And then, of course, for employees, yeah, like just living your normal life, those are probably going to be the bigger incentives for them.
Yeah, I mean, I was almost going to joke. I mean, you don't have to offer a lot, I think, often to get people to do things. There may be some who are just simply on the fence. Others, if they are more opposed, that's a different story. But as I mean,
just upgrading the coffee in your office might just be enough for people.
That's kind of where my head was going. Exactly. Okay, finally, the SEC is probing whether Volkswagen violated securities rules. Securities rules with its Volkswagen April Fool's stunt. VW leaked a false report. It was considering changing its name to highlight its EV efforts. It later claimed the whole thing was a joke to call attention to its electric vehicles. Well, the problem, Tim, is that its stock shot up 5% on the news. Does the SEC have any recourse here?
Look, misrepresentation, no matter what the intent, is something that the SEC is very focused on. And there have been other, higher profile examples of that. Funding 420, we know who that was. And I just think that there's a difference between cracking a joke and having investors on the wrong side of the joke. I think the highlight here is ultimately that VW is a leader in the EV space. They are focused on it. My play is GM in the space, who I think actually on multiple is a lot more attractive and has a lot less EV with a lot more EV in their future priced into their stock. But yes, I think you have to be careful about the communication to the markets, and I'm all for clear communication.
Robert, I guess to me it's strange because I would imagine once it became clear this was a joke, the stock would have given back the gains. I mean, is the SEC implying that the 5%, or perhaps it's like, okay, it moved 5% that day, so inside, or what is the issue, the 5% that day or 5% permanently, or you know what I'm saying? I mean, it would seem to be sort of a high bar to say that anything your company ever does, even if a CEO makes a joke at this point, if it affects the stock price. But I guess in this issue, it's because people thought they were serious for a while.
Yeah, it's confusing exactly what they would charge them with or what they're investigating. This is a waste of SEC time. The only thing that Volkswagen is guilty of is calendar abuse. They put this out on the wrong day. It wasn't April 1st. It was March 30th. And then they corrected it the next day. And so no one knew it was an April Fool's joke because it wasn't April Fool's Day. So fine, you got your calendar wrong. You should be ashamed. Please get better at calendar maintenance. But the SEC, especially at a time with so much froth and investor deception in the markets right now, this is not where they should be spending their time.
All right, we got to go. But Joanna, my hot take on this.
I'm going to play counter that.
Well, and I think they should change their name to Volkswagen. I like the name. I think it's brilliant. Go ahead.
I actually hope the SEC punishes here only for the reason that this teaches every company to stop with April Fool's jokes.
I know that, too.
I mean, that's just my wish here, is just please stop. So this is what it takes. I'm sorry, Volkswagen.
That's true.
Sorry.
They're taking one for the team. Robert Frank, Joanna Stern, and Tim Seymour, thank you all very, very much.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.